A 400-year-old fortress in Cambridge.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us on this very unique video adventure. You're about to see evidence of what may well be one of the most cunning acts of stealth treachery in American history. And, what better place to concoct such a scheme than the last place on Earth that anyone would ever suspect? A hallowed, prominent institution firmly planted in our midst, for nearly 400 years, long regarded as the loftiest of all ivory towers, and as the highly esteemed pinnacle of higher learning, yet with what seems to be another very secretive side to it. Harvard University, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, established, in the American colonies by the British Crown, in 1636. An American institution, but, could it still be secretly in devoted service to its primary creator, the British Crown? We'll investigate, with drone and 3D satellite video, animation and still life images, from Boston, Harvard, and Cambridge, to uncover an entrenched British fortress, sanitized, yet hiding in plain sight. But, be sure to pull up your boots and strap on your helmet, as we'll encounter the swamp, where we'll find quite the unexpected. Some of the biggest, most bizarrely placed firearms in the world, dangerous unexploded munitions, and strange serpentine creatures, with rabid bloodlust, waiting to feast on their next meal. Let's go. Is this our first clue? Interesting to see a target, of all things, with concentric rings, and in such a celebrated spot, on the Harvard campus. But, what can it possibly mean? Could it represent a very highly compartmentalized, multi-layered crime ring? One with something very clandestine and dark, at its core? How peculiar. And, now, here's a White House press reporter, on Wednesday, August 19, 2020, asking the president some very strange questions about Satanism, of all things. Was she trying to corner him? Why would she even be asking him about such seemingly outlandish and preposterous things as pedophiles and cannibalism? And, at a White House press conference, of all places.
Just real quick, at the crux of the theory is this belief that you are secretly saving the world from this satanic cult of pedophiles and cannibals. Does that sound like something you are behind?
Well, I haven't heard that, but is that supposed to be a bad thing or a good thing? I mean, you know.
Goodness. Could a satanic cult of pedophiles and cannibals really be trying to take control of humanity and the planet? Could an attempted satanic takeover actually be happening? It sounds so bizarre and ridiculous. Which may be why the reporter posed that crazy question. Was she trying to label the president as some sort of an eccentric conspiracy theorist? What if a long-hidden British Crown plot, by its monarchy, to take back America from rebellious, independence-minded Americans knows no limits for evil? Could it even include such predatory practices as pedophilia to terrorize our young people and outright false flag attacks against America, and even such awful extremes as the vicious cannibalism, still hidden from history, that secretly terrorized the people of China during Mao Zedong's communist cultural revolution in the 20th century? Oh my goodness, that sure seems extreme. Yet, isn't America very likely the most valuable property on the planet? Then and now? And, weren't the 13 American colonies, by far, quite likely the most valuable real estate asset ever owned and controlled by the British Crown? Could the grievous loss to the British Empire of its so-called American plantation, in fact, have helped drive King George III stark raving mad? More recently, many believe that infamous convicted pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, did not, in fact, die by his own hand. Instead, among other beliefs, it is thought that Epstein's close connections to the rich and very powerful, including British royalty, deemed him more valuable dead than alive. If so, why so? In addition to alleged pedophilia of girls, and abuse of young women, what other such sordid practices might have taken place on Epstein's Little St. James pedophile island and at Epstein's other properties? Could these have included satanic practices? Were any of these young people disappeared? Was Epstein himself, in a sense, disappeared? Let's return to the drone shot of the target at Harvard and start digging there. Notice, the rings are made of granite, which is a single crystal and is far stronger than any brick. Do these rings symbolize multiple concentric crime rings? Does this help to visualize unique levels of access to secrets, like the Freemasons famously do, with 33 degrees, or steps, some say more, to reach the top. Is this here a key training tool to the inner workings of keeping secrets? And in such a prominent spot? Does it designate this building, or all of Harvard, as some type of epicenter for what's called an invisible college? History buffs may have noticed a British connection, out of the gate. The target design is very similar to the British World War II insignia. Did you know that a devoted member of the court of Queen Elizabeth I, Francis Bacon, is considered the secret founder of America? He's the creator of the Rosicrucians and Freemasons secret societies. Notice, in this Rosicrucian artifact, the crown is on top, with the cross resting on the bent neck of a goose. Isn't this a direct insult against Christianity? And would you describe these people as loyalists? Loyal to the crown? Bacon, one could say, a creature of the crypt, also happened to be a master cryptographer. He showed his genius, developing his Bacon cipher, roughly 500 years ahead of today's public key-private key encryption methodology. Speaking about hiding in plain sight, I've hidden a secret message inside a Bacon cipher for you. But don't worry, I'll help you find it. The secret message is the name for Harvard, which our forefathers would have also used, had they known of the dangerous and secret plans being conjured there. It's 15 letters long. Here's the encoded string. It's a bunch of A's and B's. But, if I gave you the cipher, you'd see a solution is not far off. Each group of 5 is mapped to a different letter in the alphabet. A, all A's. P starts with an A followed by 4 B's. So, we'll divide that long string into groups of 5, and add them into the table on the right, then each matching letter in the empty column. Let's start in the first position. We'll both search for the 5 highlighted letters. Found it. It's an F. Now, the next 5 highlighted letters. I found it. It's an O. Another set of 5 letters. It's the letter R. No, 2 R's. 3? We got 4 letter R's. Can you imagine doing this under candlelight? Why exactly was secrecy so important to Francis Bacon? Any ideas on the new name for Harvard? Let's hurry up and find it. It's coming. There's the first word, fortress. There it is. Fortress Harvard. Will we find Fortress Harvard is a more historically accurate name for Harvard University? Could it actually be a think tank for royal revenge? You'll see. Now you understand how Bacon and his Knights of the Helmet, known to be the masterminds behind William Shakespeare, encoded secret messages into the many plays and sonnets they created. This used a Bacon cipher. But, his bilateral cipher was even more secret. This painting, made in 1916, demonstrates what's behind the magic of Bacon's bilateral cipher, which famously can make anything signify anything. This one defined optional elements to build this flower, where each element had a predefined coded value. This flower had an encoded root system, encoded veins in the leaves, encoded types of rays of flowers, and so on. The flower may look a bit homely. But, beauty was not the point. The researcher who made this encoded art, named the flower Shakespeare, and embedded a secret message so this flower could be displayed to the public, while only those select few with the cipher could extract the hidden message. Now we can ask, has the Bacon cipher empowered secret societies, for as long as 500 years, to hide any kind of secret message in plain sight? And, is this how Harvard's invisible college remained invisible, until now? Harvard was formed in Cambridge, in 1636, by the British. But, 18 years prior, in 1618, Francis Bacon and his Rosicrucian followers had already documented the concept of an invisible college, with this outlandish illustration, which appears as if it was produced while under drug-induced hallucination. As you can see, the strange building is on wheels, and looks terribly out of place. It's got wings, men doing bizarre tasks on the ground, and others sitting atop the roof, like soldiers arming a fortress, but armed only with shields and feathers shaped like swords. The building itself has a big arm with a big sword, capable only of guarding the front door, which seems shaped like a large phallus. Letters, with wings, are seen flying through the air. It's crazy. There's a ship stuck on a mountain, in the distance, and even a man who seems to have jumped off a cliff, foolishly, with wings that clearly will not save him. Senselessness. There's a hand in the cloud tethered to the invisible college which seems to have lowered it there, in the first place. Is that hand also clutching an old hooded carcass? Lastly, the two creatures flying closest to the cloud are what appear to be a goose and a naked man, wrapped in a serpent. Is that goose as close to their god as the human? If so, why would it be? And why the serpent? Someone, or some group, with very dark designs encoded every detail of this strange symbolic image of the invisible college into one big fairy tale. Yet, a fairy tale that some extremely powerful people, even today, may still seem to take very seriously. Does the hand represent their god? And, is their god driven by a desire for revenge? One last look at the peak of the Harvard Business School, to see if there's a resemblance. Do you see any seeming similarities? I do. Even that long narrowing spire suggests a connection to the hand of their god. The hand that was holding what looked like a hooded human carcass. There's no crime in choosing one building design over another. But, the seemingly high crimes and acts of treason against the United States of America, suggested by what we'll be seeing on our adventure, are another matter. Let's bring a higher perspective to our search.
Memorial Hall, Victoria, Empress of India and Opium.
Let's take a drone ride and see if we can find a British fortress hiding in plain sight on the Harvard campus. This is Memorial Hall, a Victorian Gothic structure, built in 1876, to honor Harvard's Civil War dead. But, strangely, only those students from the northern states, who died fighting for the Union, were memorialized and honored here. Those Harvard students, from the southern Confederate states, who perished in that very painful and costly war, are long forgotten by Harvard. This sort of selective memorial, honoring some of the fallen, but not all, is in bold contrast to a plan for national healing, called Reconstruction, that was begun by President Abraham Lincoln, 11 years prior, to turn swords into plowshares, and make America one nation again, under God. Did Harvard's seemingly stark rejection, in its memorial, of the since assassinated President Lincoln's plea for national healing and unity, instead, plant a seed of division we see still festering today? Who was Harvard serving with this decision? On May 1, 1876, just as Memorial Hall first opened, with its Victorian Gothic architectural designs, Britain's Queen Victoria was also honoured with the celebrated title, Empress of India. Isn't that about the same time that India became a major producer of poppies, for the British opium trade? And, where did all that opium end up? Well, the data shows that the United States of America has consistently consumed over 80% of the world's illegal drugs, ever since such records were kept. So, then, what about Boston being the safe harbor for British shipping? Was there an opium smuggling connection between the British East India Trading Company and Harvard's invisible college-connected elite? And, possibly this British fortress we seek? Did you know, Twin Towers are considered a Masonic symbol of strength and stability? And, these particular twin towers, known as the Boston Harbor Towers, were built precisely where opium was smuggled into America, by the British, for likely as long as 200 years. These towers rest on an area known as East India Row. Some might wonder if there was any involvement of this Harvard Masonic temple, in that profitable endeavor, in the day. And, is there a Harvard Invisible College connection to the flood of opioids into nearby New Hampshire, today, that has so devastated that state? With this tower, as another important Masonic symbol, the all-seeing eye, do you seem to see a strange image of what appears to be a face, with eyelashes and eyebrows, and odd expression? At this high elevation, can the peculiar entity seemingly depicted here appear to see planes lifting off from Logan Airport? Logan Airport lies in the direction of Cambridge Street, below, which ends at a different pair of twin towers, which the Bin Laden family reportedly visited, for some reason, before the 9/11 attacks in 2001. They're called the Museum Towers, and they sit at the entrance to a strange esoteric garden, which one finds to be located opposite the Green Line from the Museum of Science. Could this lead us to some clues? Let's look. You can see that Cambridge Street looks like the barrel of a musket that ends in Cambridge, at North Point Park. This is Hult International Business School, and out front are a cluster of 3 interesting intentional stone carvings that we'll be investigating.
Twisted Eden, the serpent is the master of the garden.
Let's check out that curious garden for clues. Below the drone is the 10-story Hult building, which sits at the entrance to the garden. Notice the twin towers at the entrance to the garden. These even have twin Egyptian obelisks and pyramids, on all sides of both towers. Twin towers are regarded as a Masonic symbol of strength and stability and a gateway to another world. But, are they also, inversely, an expression of how America can be defeated? Of divide and conquer? False flags? Let's continue. North Point Park has two companies associated with a Swedish billionaire named Bertil-Erik Hult. They are Education First, headquartered in Switzerland, and Hult International Business School, one of the largest business schools in the world. Let's look next door, at the American headquarters for Education First. Does it look intentionally broken to you? How odd, that it was built to appear to be fractured into twin towers. See that? And the gap at the top has formed a huge serpent, overlooking the entire garden. Do you see the eyes? Is that a gaping open mouth? What is with Cambridge and serpents? Did it get a headbutt from an Egyptian obelisk? About the height of the Bunker Hill Monument? Isn't that another pair of eyes? What are they all watching? Could it involve the children? As it happens, there are 4 huge playsets for children, of all ages, in North Point Park. Hult International Business School has campuses here, in Cambridge, also in London, San Francisco, Dubai, Shanghai, and New York City. Wait just a moment. That building looks like it's in the process of exploding. See that? The other Hult buildings look pretty normal, but the New York location seems to be another broken building, and this one even looks like it's in the process of breaking apart. What is this? Is there some reason the headquarters of Education First and the New York City campus of Hult share this common theme of destruction? Well, one common element may be the 9/11 attacks of 2001, which this esoteric garden may have had a role in predicting, with New York City being the intended target. Another common element, since these two buildings were built by different companies, are the one man, Bertil-Erik Hult. On the surface, he seems quite charming and charitable, in that he has committed his life to working with children, languages, travel, and education, throughout the world. But, is that just a profitable cover for something perhaps far less altruistic? Both companies coordinate visas for young people traveling to, and from, the United States. So the U.S. Department of State has cleared these entities to manage the affairs of our youth. But, do those with possible connections to invisible colleges fill out applications honorably? You can get some idea of a company's mission by looking at its logo. So, let's have a look. Do you see what I see in the Education First logo? Multiple concentric circles? Does that remind you of an invisible college? Like the one, which the British Crown and followers of Francis Bacon seem to have envisioned at Harvard? Why would a company, which interacts with tens of thousands of students and children per year, broadcast a symbol that could attract occultists to come in for a closer look? What's going on? Could some, at Education First, be associated with an invisible college at Harvard? One, with which convicted pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, could have very well been connected. And the logo for Hult? It's clearly a shield, but what's the strange hook at the bottom? With all these serpents in the garden, could this be reptilian? Again? Is it a giant gaping mouth about to swallow another bit of food? Is it a turtle or tortoise? With a tail? Is there a connection to the 3 turtles swimming eastward, by the children's playsets you just saw? What exactly do they represent? Let's finally get back to look at the serpent, which first got us interested in this esoteric garden. It's an expertly carved, stone serpent. It even has a mouth. The eyes were carved, as was the divot, forming the depression between the eyes. Spooked yet? If this were the Garden of Eden, he'd be the master of the garden, right? The direction in which each of these stone carvings is gazing is very telling. And, this serpent is gazing at the all-seeing eye, at Harvard, that we looked at. Are they revealing that Harvard is his energy source? No question, he is the master of the garden. So, we have clearly entered another world. I just hope it's not supposed to be hell on earth. Especially, with all those children so nearby.
A hungry serpent must be fed.
To show that the garden and surroundings are encoded, let's take a 2-minute walk from the serpent, master of the garden, to twin buildings named Sierra and Tango, NATO-coded call signs for the letters S and T, as in street. Look what they placed between Sierra and Tango. Is this also code? 2 streets, running in opposite directions, with the same name, Earhart Street. Is this a coded suggestion that pioneering female pilot, Amelia Earhart, was secretly bisexual? Her sexual preference was debated before she vanished mysteriously in 1937. If so, what sort of perverts would design this? What else do we see? A few steps away, we see a building called 2020, which could be code for, look here, at this location. As we know, 2020 vision is considered perfect vision. And, in police and CB lingo, what's your 20? Means, what's your location? Right in front of 2020 is Child Street, and we can see it's a one-way street that makes a U-turn. Could this be code for, child goes both ways? Or, children go both ways? If so, who are these perverts? Are they suggesting, in our face, that every child is bisexual? What's inside the loop? 3 eggs? Do the eggs represent genders? Like, boy, girl, other? If so, other seems broken. Does Sierra Tango, ST, just mean street? Maybe saint? Does the left regard transsexuals and transvestites as if they're brave saints to boldly come out as the opposite or a non-binary gender? Is this whole park designed as a sort of training ground for something dark and dangerous to children? And, what do we have here? A Murphy staircase with a shape unlike any ever seen, with the shape of a masked caper, that appears as a peeping Tom. And, the Murphy walkway provides an elevated view of, you guessed it, Child Street. Did you know, a Murphy hideaway is a bed that folds up and vanishes into the wall? When does this freak show border on criminal activity? Do the families living in 2020, Sierra, Tango, and other nearby buildings, have a clue that they purchased condos in the belly of the beast? As if that's not enough already, just a few steps from 2020 is a giant lizard with a tongue, no joke, that seems to be actually feeding on the eggs. Is this whole garden about serving children to a serpent? Like Harvard, does the education focus serve to draw the children in? Back to the stone carvings in front of the Hult headquarters.
Satanic Garden at North Point Park, race supremacy is welcome here.
Could Sierra and Tango mean more than just street and saint? Sierra, Echo, Romeo, Papa, Echo, November, Tango, spells serpent. Are they mocking us, with all this encoded crap? And, not a peep from the people? Have we been missing all the encoding? Does this bring a sense of smug superiority to those who know the codes? Is this garden the perverted Garden of Eden? Celebrating serpents, pedophilia, and 9/11? Of the 5 stone carvings, you've already met the master of the garden. The second reptile is this viper, staring directly and intently through those twin towers. Is his job to ensure none shall pass? The first of 3 mammals is a modern white man, which you can see, if you look at the right profile of the carving. See it? Forehead, eyes, nose, mouth, chin. He is avoiding the gaze of both the viper and the serpent, either out of deference or fear. You'll see 2 other men. A prehistoric Asian man and the other, that is some sort of ape-like prehistoric Cro-Magnon type man that evolved from Africa. Let's examine the direction of their gazes. The Asian man's back is to you, in this image, as he looks towards Boston, as if into the future. He's protected on the other side of this slab of the Berlin Wall, and safely out of view of both the viper and the serpent. Conversely, as the viper blocks entrance into the garden, he can watch every single move of the white man. So, where would you guess the African man is gazing? In the exact opposite direction of the Asian man, and in the same direction as the viper. Was the African placed just close enough for a bite by the viper? Are they both on guard duty? Is the African Cro-Magnon like man a slave of the viper? This view is from behind the African man, while the viper is low to the ground and out of view. Both are gazing towards the middle of the Twin Towers, in the back of the picture. It seems the training messages here, imparted to invisible college trainees by these strange carved stones, may include that Asians are the future, white people are the past, and Africans, or at least Black Americans, ought to be dutifully focused on past injustices to distract them from even noticing there is a future. Is this why the left can somehow manage to turn any matter at all into a race issue? And, then, suggest that everything is rooted in slavery? All the while, never dare challenging China, especially on the issue of Chinese slavery? Is the Asian man somehow anointed? Protected by some kind of modern-day Iron Curtain? Speaking of the utter abuse of Black Americans by the left, here's an interesting quote from Notorious Bill Ayers, co-founder of the radical group, The Weather Underground, Maoist revolutionary, and longtime confidant to former American President Barack Obama. Here, shown with fellow co-founder of the Weather Underground and wife, Bernadine Dawn. Blacks can be used for the revolution, but they can be sacrificed as part of the revolution, as well. Indeed, like the Muslims, they are cannon fodder for the revolution. Bill Ayers, as quoted by Larry Grathwohl, FBI undercover whistleblower and author. With the infamous Weather Underground supposedly gone, Ayers and Dawn published a book 25 days after their recruit, Barack Obama, was inaugurated as U.S. President in 2009, that started the 8 painful years of decay of race relations in America. And, just by chance, it encapsulates the agendas of radical activist groups, Black Lives Matter and Antifa. Their book is called Race Course Against White Supremacy. This is an especially odd name for a book from former weathermen, since, according to Larry Grathwohl, blacks were not even allowed in the Weather Underground, and were relegated to Weather Underground support groups, like the Black Liberation Army and the Black Panthers, later renamed the May 19th Communist Organization, of which Obama has been found, by the way, by documentary filmmaker Joel Gilbert, to have been a member. And, more recently, to the groups, Black Lives Matter and the 60-plus black hate groups collectively called Assata's Daughters. Did Bill Ayers visit this esoteric park? Help spread Marxism in the faculty lounge at Harvard? Did the Weather Underground simply keep their promise of going underground? Are they, in fact, still active, as invisible mentors, and instrumental in the recent unrest in America? These training tools seem to display what appear to be a proud heritage of white supremacy, by deception, at the heart of the invisible college. So, which political party does Helt support? How many millions does he donate, each year, to the Democrats?
Lucifer's laser, 9/11 foreknowledge, hiding in plain sight.
Now that we have discovered apparent bigotry, if not outright evil, on display at North Point Park, let's take a closer look at where that barrel was pointing. Cambridge Street ends at Lechmere Station, then points through those twin towers you saw. Then, onto Boston's Logan Airport, Terminal B, where both planes boarded on September 11, 2001. Road alignment is, of course, in itself, not a crime, but one should note that the British had great influence in the planning, layout, and alignment of roads, because the King of England owned this land up until the American Declaration of Independence in 1776. So, as we said, Cambridge Street ends at Lechmere Station in Cambridge. So, then, who or what was located there, at the end point, at Lechmere? As it happens, Richard Lechmere was a British loyalist, which is someone loyal to the English monarchy, who fled to England during the Revolutionary War to avoid being hanged by America for treason. So, who made sure his name lived on, in perpetuity, at this critical place on the Cambridge map? Do we find it somewhat disconcerting, as we learn how many secrets have been hidden, for so long, right under our noses, that seem to be mocking us? The Harvard to Lechmere bus bears the bus number, 69. Does this assigned number reflect how much the powerful at Harvard love messing with the citizens? Are there invisible networks at work, behind the scenes, as powerful as they are perverse? In contrast, the Harvard to Tufts University bus is bus number 96. If 69, in the vernacular, suggests the most intimate sex, does its inverse number, 96, also suggest bedfellows? Just asking. This is the business end of Memorial Hall, where the eyeball, at top, is 30 yards north of the center line of Cambridge Street, which is to your left, in this view. A sky view shows the red imaginary laser is 30 yards from the center line of Cambridge Street. Here's another view, where those strange barrels on the roof aim precisely at the eyeball. This is the other side of the School of Architecture, George Gund Hall, at Harvard, which was built in 1972. Notice the points at the top? So, when the musket barrel ends at Lechmere, the imaginary red laser continues through the garden, and onto Boston Logan International Airport, where it hits Terminal B, 30 yards north of where the barrel is aiming, which is dead center. Let's see if we can learn more about this curious laser. These are the twin towers that seem to be guarding entry to the esoteric garden. Look at that spacing. Clearly, those two towers, that were built in 1998, under then-President Bill Clinton, 3 years before the World Trade Center attacks, were precisely designed to be the gun sites for the barrel, which is Cambridge Street. Friends, this is what foreknowledge of the fated flights out of Logan Airport looks like. Let's continue. Let's see. The laser exits the corner of the old Education First building, now known as the Halt building. No big deal. Then, it proceeds to intersect both sharp corners of the bizarre-looking broken building, Education First headquarters. That is a huge deal. And, from a sky view, the broken building is divided into twin triangles. While, from the front, that same building appears divided into twin towers. An interesting feat of design. What could have inspired it? Is it some sort of esoteric energy source? So much planning, preparation, and expense for such a despicable expression of evident animosity and mockery of America. Is this sort of thing along the lines of what we might find at the heart of Harvard's Invisible College? And, how much have our governments been involved in funding and facilitating this type of regrettable expression? Well, one man we might ask is Massachusetts Governor, Charlie Baker. As it appears that he helped Education First qualify for a $133 million loan from the state of Massachusetts to build this monument to 9/11 murder. Why would he do that? Is selling out America a very profitable endeavor? What's in it for him? Is it just coincidence that he arranged for that Masonic-sounding loan to build this particular bizarrely designed building? Or, did we just catch Charlie Baker drinking from the 9/11 blood trail?
Liftoff from Logan. Twin towers built to be destroyed?
Let's get out of this satanic North Point Park, Cambridge. But, something tells me that we'll be back to save the children. That's downtown Boston, on the other side of the Charles River, below. That's the mouth of the Charles River, and the Boston Museum of Science. You may ask, who decided to put a children's museum so close to yet another mouth? Look. Do you see what's on top of the museum? It's some kind of four-legged thing. Is that another encoded secret? And here it is, at night. Have you ever seen anything like that? Does it remind you of any recent skyscraper to go up? In New York City, perhaps? How about the new One World Trade Center, in New York City? Here it is. Does the design, here, look similar? This is the new One World Trade Center tower, which took the place of the two fallen twin towers that were attacked and destroyed on September 11, 2001. This shows it's the same strange design, as seen at the Boston Museum of Science. But, since the Museum of Science was finished, in the 1950s, this suggests a very troubling little detail. The Invisible College, which may have well had a hand in designing the Satanic Garden, was, likely, already long in existence, when they built this Children's Museum of Science. Well, then, is it just some sort of commonly used insider's symbol we see on top of the Museum of Science? Or, have they, intentionally revealed that they were somehow already aware of the details of the design of the new replacement One World Trade Center tower, in New York City, even before the first World Trade Center twin towers were built? Could this secret be yet another training tool, hiding in plain sight, for up-and-coming insider members of the Invisible College, for those with eyes to see, as they say, to teach them the following? We built the World Trade Center twin towers, and we built them to be destroyed and then replaced. Who exactly are these monsters? Let's now head back to Memorial Hall, in Cambridge, and try to determine the source of all this vindictiveness, of all this evil.
British fortress hiding in plain sight?
We're back at Memorial Hall, at Harvard University, in Cambridge, where our investigations first got started, to see if we're uncovering a hidden British fortress. So far, we've found offensive weapons. But, to qualify as a fortress, we will also need to discover defensive weapons. Cambridge Street, as the barrel of a gun, and Memorial Hall, laser gun sight. This is an offensive weapon. Gunt Hall, which channels this occultic Illuminati light into the all-seeing eye. That is offensive. The twin museum towers, which allows the gun to be accurately trained on its target, Logan Airport, and provides entry into that other world. Offensive. The Satanic Garden, which symbolizes that other world, and, at the center, an intentionally designed broken building, for a final evil omen, or perhaps curse, as the laser departs the otherworldly garden, and hits Logan. Offensive. And all those serpent eyes watching all those children? Offensive. Highly offensive. Conversely, might this be a defensive weapon? It looks like a defensive wall fortification, protecting the big gun, Memorial Hall. The giant laser that powers this whole evil operation. See that? It even appears to be a Revolutionary War era buttress for defense, constructed of logs, just like in the 1700s. Look on the right side of it, how it even appears to be floating, with no column supporting the weight of it. And look, 9 big logs, holding up the structure. How did they ever create such an old-fashioned structure? And, right in the middle of the Harvard campus? Is it an optical illusion? Or, is it a British fortress, hiding right under our noses? Here's how this fortification looks, from the ground. Ugly cement. Remember George Gund Hall, School of Architecture? If you recall, there were 9 logs on the top. Here, we see that there are 11 columns holding up the weight of the building. That's 9 and 11. Is there a more universal encoded significance to the 9/11 numerical architectural pattern that we see, clearly, here? Or, could this building have actually been built to herald the 9/11 attacks, which took place 29 years later? Weren't we looking for rock-solid proof of foreknowledge of those attacks? Does cement qualify as rock-solid? This building was designed to follow an architectural style, a design pattern called brutalist, which was only popular for a few years, in the early 1970s. Is this how the Invisible College teaches and signals its naked hatred of the United States of America, by using such encoded training tools, in embedded designs? And, hiding them in plain sight? This picture, on the right, was taken from the Bunker Hill Monument, which is at a higher elevation. So, the reflective quality of the glass means, from up above, that the glass only reflects back muted green and brown tones. It's as if the building was engineered to intentionally consume the light. These are very dark designs. No pun intended. There may be yet another defensive weapon intentionally architecturally designed into George Gund Hall. But, first, let's take a quick trip to Chichen Itza, Mexico, to see how the ancients protected the party elders. This pagan pyramid was built to keep the powerful in charge, by causing fear in the people, and killing those who dared to challenge their occult authority. Many, who were summoned to the top, never came down alive, were brutally sacrificed, and had their heads rolled down the steps to frighten those below from stepping out of line. Some archaeologists believe that they were also cannibalized, which would definitely also deter rebellion in those below. Before we go back to Gund Hall, notice that the Pyramid of Chichen Itza was designed with 9 large steps, which display a winding serpent on the spring equinox, and which even have a feeding serpent head at the base of the steps. So, should we be worried that Gund Hall, at Harvard, seems to have been an effort to replicate this gruesome stepped pagan design? Just what does the Invisible College intend to do with us? How ancient is this enemy that we are uncovering? How will they memorialize us, when they've had their way with us? Does George Gund Hall form the heart of this British fortress? Are its guards as vicious as they look? We found 3 defensive weapons at Gund Hall, including the guards. But, like when mining for gold and you've hit the main vein, we must keep digging. Would you describe all these as artifacts? Or, as evidence in a crime? There's something you need to see, behind that tree. Here's the satellite view. It's a triangular window exposing the study area, below ground. It's like a window into another world. We were looking for defensive weapons. But, this is surely offensive. It looks like it could be shot down Cambridge Street, like a railgun. Are these embedded codes the wild fantasies of those at the core of Harvard's Invisible College? Shall we wait and find out? As if that glass bullet window into another world wasn't dangerous enough, it's also a prism, which can bend light. In this case, the light comes from the left, from the direction of the Bunker Hill Monument, which is an Egyptian obelisk, atop which sits the fabled all-seeing eye. And, you know, it does not matter if you believe this stuff. What matters is that the people who seem to want to harm us have demonstrated that they do. These are the perverts and pedophiles, from the ancient world, apparently still worshipping a pagan, occult, very destructive god, and exalting ancient and dangerous symbols. So, let's see what kind of Harvard connections we get with the Bunker Hill Monument. One that leaps out, at least for stonemasons, is that the Bunker Hill Monument was made from granite from the Quincy Granite Quarry. In fact, to ease transport from the South Shore of Massachusetts, the Granite Railway was built, making it the first commercial railway in the United States. Could this be why the street name, Quincy Street, was chosen for the road between Memorial Hall and George Gund Hall? We know that Quincy was a president at Harvard, but no other Harvard president, that we know of, had a name so closely connected to the Bunker Hill Monument. The next link to Harvard involves a famous female United States senator, who recently ran for president, and who has, also, fairly recently, been ridiculed for using the false claim of having Cherokee American Indian heritage to nail down a high-paying job at Harvard that was intended for bona fide minorities. At the base of the Bunker Hill Monument is a funerary urn, which celebrates just one fallen soldier, Major General Dr. Joseph Warren. It was donated by the Freemasons at King Solomon's Lodge. Dr. Warren wore his best suit to the battle that day. He was 33 years old. The perfect age to die for your lodge. Did he know it was his last day as a human, and his first day as a demigod? His young wife had already died 2 years prior. Her name? It is the same as the senator's. Yes, the wife of the hallowed and martyred Major General Dr. Joseph Warren was also named Elizabeth. Elizabeth Warren. An odd coincidence? Could this finally explain why Senator Elizabeth Warren was hired by Harvard 9 full years before 2001? Was this the work of the Invisible College, getting ready to raise the spirit of the Bunker Hill Monument memorialized demigod, Major General Dr. Joseph Warren, on September 11, 2001? Was this the so-called dark energy power source that was to be emitting from the Bunker Hill Monument and radiating the Illuminati light, if you will, down to the all-important Harvard fortress we just discovered? Could the Invisible College of Harvard be Freemasonic, in part? In total? Did Francis Bacon and his entourage, of Queen Elizabeth I's court in Britain, create the Invisible College? The Rosicrucians? The White Helmets, and other secret societies? The Freemasons? And what about Senator Elizabeth Warren's fake Cherokee claim? Could this false claim have actually boosted her chances with the Invisible College? She got the job. Will Harvard remain silent about Warren's falsified employment application? Wasn't it the Freemasons who famously threw tea from the ships at the Boston Tea Party, after dressing up as fake Indians? Have the Freemasons been guiding the history of the United States from behind a curtain, this entire time? Were the 9/11 attacks a roll out of a long-planned, managed decline of America, called the post-American century? Has America come together since those horrific attacks? Or do we see it coming apart? If a fake Indian, on the staff at Harvard, was expected to stir the sainted spirit of Joseph Warren, might there be a fake Indian connection to that all-important calendar date of September 11th? Yes, during the American Revolutionary War. The Sugarloaf Massacre was a battle that occurred on September 11, 1780, when both Indians and British Loyalists attacked a small detachment of volunteer American militia in Sugarloaf, Pennsylvania, and, quite literally, massacred them. Farmers, blacksmiths, and businessmen took up arms to win their own freedom from Britain and were caught in the bloodiest fighting of the entire Revolutionary War. In Iroquois Indian fashion, the militiamen were, first, trapped, executed, scalped and, then, cannibalized. The Loyalists involved in the massacre, those loyal to the Crown, were playing the bloody hand for the Crown, whom they served, when they took part in this bloodshed. Did they also consume the flesh of those massacred American patriots? Let's take one last look for a few more offensive weapons aimed at us. See those twin burnt sienna brownish-red colored buildings below? Might they represent a ballista? See the similarity? Ballistas launched stones, logs, and other projectiles, often in hopes of breaking down the wall of a strong fortress. This ballista is yet another clue to other key 9/11 massacres from the ancient world. The Babylonians, pagan occultists, attacked and destroyed the first temple of Jerusalem, on the Hebrew calendar date of the 9th of Av, on the 9th day of the 11th month, in the year 586 BC, after which followed an important series of copycat massacres conducted on that numerological date, throughout history. The Romans, also pagan occultists, followed suit by destroying the Second Temple of Jerusalem, once again, on the 9th of Av, on the 9th day of the 11th month, in the year 70 AD. Interestingly, the Romans are credited with the invention of the ballista, and such rounded stones have since been found at the site of the destroyed Second Temple of Jerusalem. So, we note that both destroyers of the two Jerusalem temples, the Babylonians and the Romans, were occultists. Did you know that the Nazis were also occultists? Yes, it's true. Though, this truth has been largely sanitized and hidden from history. But, the Nazis also murdered by the same numerology which brought down the World Trade Center Twin Towers. Hitler's coup took place on November 9, 1923. In German date format, that's 9/11/1923. Hitler ordered his terrible Kristallnacht, known as the Night of the Broken Glass, on November 9, 1938. In German date format, that's 9/11/1938. It has been written that communism, fascism, Nazism, socialism, and other such isms, came out of essentially the same underlying occult sources. When we look deeply, we see that this is a matter of history. Did such sources also build this fortress at Harvard? Is there a more dangerous or offensive weapon, hiding in plain sight, in these two twin teardrop buildings, here? Could those operating within them underscore that this fortress is still taken deadly seriously by the Harvard administration? As we saw, in the garden, looking down Cambridge Street, towards Boston, is looking into the future. The building on the left side, here, is the Center for Government and International Studies. Opposite that, is the Fairbanks Center for Chinese Studies. Get it? Politics is always on the left. And, no matter what, China is always in the right. This is a window into what expert trainers know well. Make it easy for your students to visualize and personalize your core messages, and that training will last a lifetime. When you add this pro-China programming to our discovery in the garden, that the Asian man was anointed and given his own iron curtain of protection, you may start to wonder what part of Harvard University the Chinese communists don't influence. And, with all these weapons, here at Harvard, one might wonder if the most dangerous weapons of all are the Harvard education itself, and Harvard's influence. Let's get a final bird's eye view before we depart Fortress Harvard. There's Memorial Hall, George Gund Hall, Ballista, left and right. Lastly, Cambridge Common, shaped like, can you believe it? The butt of a gun. Do you also see a trigger and a trigger guard? If this earlier design had lasted, the gun would have aimed more directly at the city of Boston itself, instead of at Logan Airport, which was later built on landfill. The updated design, with Cambridge Street as a 2-mile-plus long gun barrel, is likely the longest and largest gun in the world. So, we found older, bloody British fingerprints, perhaps centuries older than 1876, when Memorial Hall was built. Did the British lay the groundwork for this big gun at the founding of Fortress Harvard, in 1636? Was the very secretive Invisible College of Harvard first conjured by Francis Bacon, John Dee and colleagues at the court of Queen Elizabeth I in Britain? And, then, further fostered from the First Church of Cambridge, just feet from the butt of the gun?
45 caliber Canal, kids and Christianity in the crossfire?
From an elevated view, the laser we thought was about the 9/11 attacks of 2001 appears also to be some sort of gateway. If the laser were an actual laser gun, blocking passage, could he who controls this laser also claim ownership of this land and its waterways, including the Mystic River, the Malden River, and the Chelsea Creek? Is the Harvard Crimson Tide rising? What kind of protections might they have concocted for the Charles River, the city of Boston's central waterway? The Charles River does appear to be serpentine. At its mouth is the Boston Museum of Science and North Point Park, both focused heavily on children. What else do we see at the mouth? What's this? Is that a .45 caliber pistol, built into the Charles River? Is this a Colt 45? A model 1911? Yet another connection to 9/11? The gun is aiming along the train tracks for the Green Line, which started running in, guess when? Yes, 1911. Note the broken building in the background, always gazing at us and the children, always in control. Have we hit another main vein? At Boston University, leftist darling, AOC, would have been a Green Line girl. Did she name the Green New Deal after the Green Line? Doubtful, as the Green New Deal agenda likely long predated her. Oh my. They even made the Boston Museum of Science into a gun scope. Where is it pointing? It's pointing at a Target. At a Target retail store, That is, in Somerville, Massachusetts. Hey, isn't that the same Target chain of stores that openly promotes all-gender bathrooms, in which a young schoolgirl can suddenly find herself alone with a burly ex-con? Why do these laser-like creations seem to focus on watching children? Is the Target symbol some sort of secretive fingerprint? Why would both the British and Target stores' logos perfectly match the Target we've seen laid in brick at the Harvard Business School? Paul Revere famously said, "The British are coming. The British are coming. Maybe they've been here all along and never left?" But, is the hatred and animosity even older than the British Crown's claim that America was built on its stolen property? Why does the Colt 45 gun fire straight up Catholic Monsignor O'Brien Highway? Are these depraved swamp creatures secretly mocking and targeting Catholicism, the Christian faith, the very backbone of Judeo-Christian Western civilization? If so, why? Let's find where this dangerous Luciferian laser originates. Remember, this map has been rotated, so the straight red line does not actually run west. Instead, it runs southeast, to the Boston waterfront, where the red laser originates, at the Boston Custom House Tower. The very structure that is precisely the singular source of the all-seeing eye. Built long before the Boston Museum of Science, it's been standing watch over the millions of children who have flocked to the museum for school trips, and with family and friends, for over half a century. The Boston Custom House Tower was purchased by President Andrew Jackson, and its construction began, under his authorization, on September 13, 1837. Jackson, who founded the Democrat Party 9 years prior, took actions, as U.S. President, knowingly or otherwise, which helped establish a basis for this laser. Jackson is also believed to have been a high-ranking Freemason, and as president, would have likely been surrounded by fellow brothers. What cryptic or other interests did they have in bringing it all about? Is it a monument to gun control? Were they watching the children, even then? Did these hidden secret agendas serve Jackson's new Democrat Party? Secret societies? Harvard? The Invisible College? If so, how so? It has been said that, you can't be a true liberal unless you've spent some time at Harvard. Could that have anything at all to do with these two mysterious lasers that we've just uncovered? Might it involve the wide reach, and hidden influence, of Harvard's Invisible College? Now that we have reoriented our image view, we can clearly see that the two lasers actually intersect. See? They cross each other at Lechmere Station in Cambridge. Surprise, surprise. Do you find it strange that Tory and traitor, Richard Lechmere, was given the distinction of having this point of intersection, the Lechmere Station landmark, named for him? Have we found another demigod, like Joseph Warren? With the addition of the Charles River, these two lasers do seem to exert some form of rule or reign over the region, over the waterways of Boston, and far beyond. Look, there's a crook in the river. What a curious place to have located Fortress Harvard.
Longfellow Bridge, by hook or by crook.
To Freemasons, Twin Towers are a symbol of strength and stability, and seen as a gateway into another world. What world might that be? Twin Towers may also represent the essence of a divide-and-conquer strategy that is tearing America to pieces, today. And, with the mythical, lore, origins and hidden symbolism of the Egyptian obelisk being a phallus, representing power and potency. Twin Towers may also suggest twin phalluses and possibly, even male homosexuality. There are many pairs of Twin Towers scattered throughout Boston. Here are just a few. Boston Harbor Towers with Boston Custom House peeping through. Sorry to say, doesn't this image strike you as phallic? JFK Twin Towers. Bank of America Twin Towers. Speaking of serpents, this particular pair, the Longfellow Twin Towers, actually looks like a serpent protecting its turf. Wider at the top. See it? How about now? What could these serpent twin towers possibly be protecting? Is this yet another encoded message? The Longfellow Towers are apparently protecting this bridge, the Longfellow Bridge. Let's see what secrets it could be hiding. Remember how Cambridge Street ends in Cambridge at the Satanic Park we just saw? Well, once the Longfellow Bridge makes landfall, to the right, that becomes Cambridge Street, Boston. Cambridge Street then wraps around to form a meat hook. Wait a minute. A meat hook? Unbelievable. Could this be another land grab? And, it's a very long fellow, if you know what I mean. Perversion and deception seem to be repeating themes. Look. It even has its clutches on the seat of power, the Massachusetts State House, itself, that sits atop Beacon Hill. Is the name for the hill, Beacon, which sounds similar to bacon, a quiet nod to Francis Bacon. I wouldn't put it past him. If possession is 9/10 of the law, as they say, then, from this design, meat hook and all, Cambridge seems to own Massachusetts. Have hidden perverts, pedophiles, and powermongers been far more brazen than we've believed? Have Harvard liberals, from their encoded Ivy League fortress Harvard headquartered in Cambridge, somehow leveraged their utter control of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to seize control of all America and the world?
A very long fellow at Washington's headquarters.
Could the considerable literary and commercial success of 19th-century celebrated writer and Harvard professor, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, have been a gross exaggeration? Or, was he simply a made man? For context, let's take a closer look at another historically renowned writer, William Shakespeare. The actual individual known as William Shakespeare, who was the son of a glovemaker, reportedly could not even sign his own name. Yet, the statue in front of his house depicts him, with pen in hand, and, very interestingly, a blank page. Why the scary skull at the top of the statue? So, then, why fake it? It's been asserted that Francis Bacon and his secret society, the Knights of the Helmet, were the secret ghost writers of the renowned body of literary work, which includes the 39 plays and 154 sonnets attributed to one William Shakespeare. Notably, in all, their collective works added over 1,700 new words to the English language, which had the effect of bringing about massive social change, by introducing then taboo topics, many of which were frightening to an innocent world. But, whom would such a cloaked deception serve? Sir Francis Bacon, a man of many remarkable talents, was a key, loyal member of the court of Queen Elizabeth I, and had fellow loyal subject, co-conspirator, and closet occultist, John Dee, assigned as the Queen's special agent. In this capacity, John Dee secretly spied on the Queen's European rivals, on her behalf, acting as a hapless businessman, as his foil. Intriguingly, John Dee undersigned private correspondence that he sent to the Queen, with the moniker 007. And is, in fact, the original James Bond. Certainly, both of these two men will have knelt before their Queen. Dee may have chosen the coded name 007 for several reasons, including the illumination and clarity brought by spectacles, and the occult numerological significance of the number 7, which can seem as a serpent, always on the watch. Are these serpent symbols found in Boston, Harvard, and Cambridge rooted in the ancient world? Did you, ever, walk like an Egyptian? Then, you may have seen it suggested that the number 7 is symbolic of the serpent. Does the Invisible College at Harvard consist of secret satanic societies that celebrate ancient Egyptian symbols, such as the Egyptian obelisk, the pyramid, and the all-seeing eye? Let's look at the former home of Professor Longfellow. This house, on Brattle Street, in Cambridge happens to also have been the former headquarters of General George Washington, during the American Revolutionary War, and is just a short walk from the First Church of Cambridge, which was the first building erected at Harvard, completed in the year that Harvard was first founded, in 1636. Could this be where Harvard's Invisible College was first conjured? Opposite Garden Street from Cambridge Commons, where George Washington first took command of the Continental Army. The structure displays a dark pattern, which is visible on buildings throughout Harvard, Boston and beyond. Twin, as in Twin Towers, and 5, as in 5 sides of the Pentagon. For an historical perspective, the British attacked fledgling America 5 times on 9/11, during the Revolutionary War, and twin times, twice, during the War of 1812. With 2 attacks on the same day, September 11, 1814, including the Battle of Baltimore. The next day, on a ship off Fort McHenry, in Baltimore, Francis Scott Key wrote what would become America's national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, which makes one wonder. Does taking a knee before the Stars and Stripes, these days, suggest disrespect for the American flag, and loyal deference to the current English monarch, Queen Elizabeth II? Does twin represent the sign of Satan? The Nazis too? Just what does the number 5 represent? Can this Rosicrucian icon help guide us towards the answer? And how about this creature atop the base lodge at the Bunker Hill Monument? Did it foretell the 9/11 attacks in 2001 and future 9/11 attacks on America? Do the eyeballs look a bit like scrolls of paper? Is it written somewhere to watch us constantly? How does this old pair of eyes relate to all those newer pairs we've seen thus far? And, with so many of them, always watching the children? We may never know the true meaning of these patterns. But, it seems that some Harvard historians, Harvard architects, and convicted pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, did know. Even Dunster Hall, named for Harvard's first president, Henry Dunster, displays that same pattern. This is Jeffrey Epstein's home on Little St. James Island, in the Caribbean. Notice twin arches, on the left? Are those phalluses? George Washington's headquarters, in Cambridge, was located right around the corner from this presumed church. To get to the church, you would go out of his front door, take a left, another left, and the door's on your left. Heard of the path of the left hand? Another dark occult secret. At the left onto Mason is a statue, which reveals that Brattle Street was dubbed Tory Row, due to the large number of British loyalists living there prior to, and in the course of the Revolutionary War. Based on the underlying design of Longfellow Park, made long after America's founding, you may wonder if the Tory loyalists ever left. Or, did they, instead, use the American flag and Harvard academic professorships to blend in, inconspicuously, after America's win? Is Harvard professor, Senator Elizabeth Warren, a Tory, also? Here's Longfellow Park. Is this an average fellow? Followed by Longfellow? Is every thought, somehow, perverse? Is it a serpent? Is it a pestle? If so, would they be celebrating the crushing of America's constitutional rights, and the opium that was secretly trafficked into, and traded, in Cambridge?
Wadsworth Mansion, another very Longfellow.
Have very cleverly concealed seeds of deviance, and royal disorder, to be more direct, a sickness, really, incubated at Harvard, spread, progressively, to all America and the world? If so, it seems that evidence of that spread is here on display at a mansion, in Middletown, Connecticut. The mansion is called the Wadsworth Mansion, and it contains a replica of the Longfellow Park, located in Cambridge, which we just saw. It was built about 18 years after the passing of heralded 19th century Harvard professor and writer, Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, whose life it remembers. But, we will see that, to those who built this place, his memory evokes the bizarre and perverse. Let's start with the simple details and work towards the abhorrent and repulsive. The same 5 and 11 pattern, as seen, previously, at Jeffrey Epstein's island property and in Harvard's oldest building. This time, with a common deviation, 5 in the middle, with twin columns on either side, in black. Is this beginning to feel a little creepy? Here, again, is Epstein's former hideaway. The satellite view of the mansion, in Middletown, shows Wadsworth Mansion, and a long grassy area, called Long Hill. You heard that right. Wadsworth Mansion, on Long Hill, in Middletown, Connecticut. Is this another Longfellow? Are they brothers? Have we been here before? Is Long Hill supposed to be another phallus? A serpent? An egg? Or, is it, possibly, another pestle? In any case, it seems like the same secret design concept was followed here, as we found in Harvard's neighborhood, in Cambridge. Even the angle is about the same. Could we be discovering more invisible college training tools on how to wreak havoc on America's youth? If this were a serpent, you can see that it's about to devour the egg. See? It's got eyes, a nose, and a gaping mouth. And, what exactly does that egg-like shape represent? Did you also notice the other serpent, as we first arrived? That the driveway and walkways are in the shape of a serpent? Once again, with a tongue. Is that an egg in its mouth? Are they watching the children here, too? What sort of ritual-type events might take place here, in off hours? Let's look next door for more clues. Oh, look, a Catholic high school. Mercy High School, nearby the mansion. Could this strange, convenient setup here represent opportunity for some sort of sick, anti-Christian, systematized pedophilia to take place? Does this perversion predate Harvard and our friend, Henry Longfellow? Could this same disease have infected the Catholic Church long ago? Did Jeffrey Epstein have a Harvard extension office here, too? At the Wadsworth Mansion? I don't know about you, but should such predators be permitted to come anywhere near our precious children? Next to Mercy Catholic High School is Vinyl Technical High School, with a baseball field. If a batter standing at home base could hit a Herculean line drive inside the third base line, it would run right up against the giant fouls we've just discovered. Is this some sort of a joke? Is home base still high school slang for having sex? Is this another encoded and embedded pedo message? But how can we be sure this is not just a very odd coincidence? Let's check out Harvard, the possible inspiration for the Wadsworth Mansion in Middletown, on Long Hill. Remember the first Longfellow? Well, just by chance, Soldiers Field Stadium, here, at the Crook in the Charles River, contains several baseball fields, as seen on the bottom of the screen. The smallest field is quite tiny from satellite and is on the Smith Playground. And, as you may have already expected, the direct line from the center of the Harvard Longfellow aims not at a Harvard baseball field, but exactly at the home base of where Pee Wee and very little boys league likely play ball. What is it about baseball fields, home base, and young boys? Having seen all this, there may be questions. For example, we might ask, do Longfellow's writings have any place in education, at all, at any level? Could they even possibly contain secret encoded messages, along the lines of Bacon's cipher, instructing perverts and pedophiles how to remain beneath the radar, while preying upon our unsuspecting youth? Does the Invisible College include perversion and pedophilia in its concealed curriculum, as it secretly draws and feeds young children to the serpent?
The Kids and the Creepy Cauldron.
We said, earlier, to expect to visit the Satanic Garden one last time, to protect the children. Now, we have a better idea of the high degree of attention paid to hiding serpents everywhere, celebrating the 9/11 attacks of 2001, in Cambridge and New York City, carefully orienting manicured stone carvings displaying what appears to be Asian supremacy, over white, and particularly black people, and all those eyes watching all those children. So, might this strange garden contain fingerprints of that satanic cult of pedophiles and cannibals, of that matter, which that White House reporter raised with President Trump? Pedophiles, we've covered. Let's have a look for the cannibals. We have described this garden as another world, and found the serpent to be the master of the garden, as it is written in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, regarding the Garden of Eden. Could this round structure, in the middle of this satanic garden, represent a big round apple with a bite taken out of it? It's where you'd expect. The forbidden fruit was located in the middle of the Garden of Eden, as it is here. What's this here? Are these twin railroad tracks laid in a bed of square tiles? Ever heard the occult term, on the square? There, oddly, directed dead center of the same twin towers, in the back. Might the British East India Trading Company have shipped its much celebrated opium from the banks of the Charles River, via rail? Did you know that the British East India Trading Company was also the commercial fleet of the British Navy? Just like today, COSCO, which stands for Chinese Ocean Shipping Corporation, is also the commercial fleet of the Chinese Navy of the CCP. And, yes, COSCO does indeed dock in Boston. Let's keep looking for something biblical. It would be nice to find the precious tree of life. The Bible tells us that anyone who ate of the fruit of the tree of life, including the serpent, would be given eternal life. In the Garden of Eden, the tree of life was located in the center, in the middle, of the garden and guarded, on the east, by two cherubs, or cherubim. Could the tree of life be represented here, in the Satanic Garden at North Point Park in Cambridge, by these children's playsets? Interestingly, there are a handful of playsets, and the age range grows older, as you head eastward. But, if children represent the tree of life, then, eating of that tree, when interpreted literally, would mean eating children. Could this suggest cannibalism of children? Let's look at what sits on the easternmost end of the chain of children's playsets. Does this strange item, hiding in plain sight, look like a cannibal's cauldron? It's the same shape as the ones used in haunted houses and horror movies. Why? Does this seem really sick? Why is this even located here, near a children's playset? Could this be a terrible clue as to what may have happened to some of those who were placed on the missing children's list and not found since? Could some have been kidnapped, to be used secretly in occult rituals by modern-day Satanists, on occult high holidays, and even eaten? If so, as such occultists would not consume the whole body of their victims, just certain parts. They would need to quickly dispose of the rest. Perhaps, by using quick-acting acid in a cauldron that looks like this one? It's presented, here, as a picnic table, which is the start of this device used as a training tool. Is this how such educators spend your tax money, intended for learning, to improve the general education level and well-being of Americans? Harvard, HULT, an education first claimed to be focused on education, yet seem to take this secretive occult encoding concept very seriously. The word college, in Invisible College, suggests studies, rank, roles and achievement. But, were these twisted training tools designed to help eager recruits move up in the ranks? At what point, then, might some of them be asked to join in, to sign on, to occult practices? To sign on to Satanism? To acquiesce to murder? To drink human blood? To consume human flesh? In order to be embraced and accepted among the inner circles of elite occultists? To move up to the next levels? Let's take a look at some of the possible hidden messages suggested by the cannibal's cauldron, in this one part of the garden. 1. We enjoy children. 2. Always eat nearby the food supply. 3. Clean up right after you eat. 4. Stainless steel lasts forever. 5. Our secret religion of Satanism teaches us that cannibalism of young bodies and blood help us to achieve eternal life. Wow. Really sick. Have you ever heard anything so despicable as this? Let's wrap up this video with a few more shocking discoveries in this garden before we listen to the full answer that President Trump gave the White House reporter when asked about pedophilia and cannibalism. When we rotate the map, we see a baby. Could that be the tree of life? For that answer, you may need to ask Mr. Holt. Why would anyone have placed the form of a swaddling baby in the Charles River? Isn't that how babies can drown? Or, might this represent some form of twisted baptism, in the waters known as the swamp? If you look at the round head of the baby, we've seen this before, in this video. It's the trigger guard on the .45 caliber pistol we saw before. Is this yet another twisted training tool to brainwash the youth to be triggered by otherwise harmless things? Like, changing common language to gender-free, such as the pronouns, he and she, to ze and z. Are our youth being trained as the trigger men? What else might we find in this satanic garden? Oh, look. Yet another serpent. This one looks like a crocodile that seems to be a beast of burden, carrying a heavy load of something, perhaps down to the river. Do the egg-like circles here signify children? Before we can finish discussing this baby in the Charles River, we need to review the serpent that greeted us at the Wadsworth mansion. You saw the egg that the serpent appears to have swallowed. But, if it had actually swallowed it, wouldn't it be visible, more so, in its belly? What if, when someone or something gets drawn into the mouth of the serpent, it can choose to gulp it down, swallow it whole, or hold it in its throat, for further digestion? Does this egg in its throat seem to be in that kind of wait state? When a person is seduced into satanic practice, if they commit vile acts, do they lose their humanity? Do they become more susceptible to assisting the serpent, Satan? Even if it means directly helping to harm their fellow man? Does this grievous act of free will separate them from God, the Father? From Christ? Do they, then, lose their personal connection to the Judeo-Christian God, Jehovah, and lose the connection to their moral compass, completely? One last look at the baby in the Charles River. Now that we've seen that the Charles River is one massive serpent with a gigantic mouth and a huge appetite for children, might that little baby be placed in the river as food for the serpent we call the Charles River? Is education, seen by the academics who built this garden, as some satanic form of serpentine mind molestation? Do the names, Harvard, HULT, and Education First, now seem to have a different meaning than they did, previously? One of the demonic tenets of modern Marxism is to drive a wedge between a child and their parents, by using secrecy with the child against the parents, and ridiculing the parents to their own child, so that the child begins to view and treat their parents with contempt and condescension. Is a goal of Marxism to teach such contempt of parents and to replace the God-given design of the parent-child sacred connection, with the state, as their new parent? Is everything about feeding the serpent? Is the role of today's Marxist cancel culture to train our young people to reject traditional values, like morality, love of family, faith in God, love of country, and common decency? Will you join me in defying and rejecting these satanic teachings and the twisted serpent cult and culture, anywhere they rear their ugly head? Avowed Maoist and Marxist, co-founder of the Weather Underground, college professor and co-architect of the highly controversial Common Core education standards, Bill Ayers, once said, "Kill all the rich people. Break up their cars and apartments. Bring the revolution home. Kill your parents. That's where it's really at." Now that we have found strong suggestions of connections to pedophilia, cannibalism, and so much more, deeply rooted in academia, and centered in the most liberal place in America, in the area of Harvard University and Cambridge, Massachusetts, in America, we can return now to hear the rest of the president's answer to that White House reporter's curious question at the press conference. Let's listen to the president's answer to that NBC reporter. Then lastly, we'll investigate a Harvard connection to the mayhem on America's streets today.
Just real quick, at the crux of the theory is this belief that you are secretly saving the world from this satanic cult of pedophiles and cannibals. Does that sound like something you are behind? Or
Well, I haven't heard that, but is that supposed to be a bad thing or a good thing? I mean, if I can help save the world from problems, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to put myself out there. And we are, actually. We're saving the world from a radical left philosophy that will destroy this country. And when this country is gone, the rest of the world would follow. The rest of the world would follow. That's the importance of this country.
What if this satanic cult of pedophiles and cannibals is precisely what we've just uncovered? And does it form the basis of the radical left philosophy the president just warned us about? Was the hatred first brought here from across the Atlantic Ocean, as some type of royal insurance policy against American self-representation? Is this why radical leftists always seem to be above the fray, untouchable by what we were told was a one-tier justice system? Were they anointed by the crown to lord over us, in some way? How long has this been going on?
Springboard for race war, fake race crime and performance art at Harvard.
At least since the 1960s, when Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dawn could literally do no wrong as the weathermen planted bombs in over 2,000 government installations, which resulted in not one day of jail time for either Ayers or Dawn, for the bombings. On the courthouse steps, declared innocent yet again, Ayers famously bragged, "Guilty as sin, free as a bird, God I love America." What powerful people were protecting the Weather Underground? How about Bill Casey, CIA director under Reagan and Bush from 81 to 87, who famously once said, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false." Isn't this video exposing disinformation? Is this disinformation program he mentioned the basis of the relentless barrage of fake news which is tearing this country apart? It's public information that in 1961, on the Harvard campus, the CIA brainwashed Ted Kaczynski, who later became the Unabomber. Is this part of the disinformation program? Did this plot originate with the CIA? Or was it Harvard's invisible college? If Ayers and Dawn were on the right side of this disinformation program, is that how they became, and remain, darlings of the left? Let's listen to Bernardine Dawn, of The Weatherman, in 1970 declare a state of war against the United States.
A federal grand jury in Detroit today charged the 13 top leaders of the Weathermen with plotting to bomb public buildings in Chicago, Detroit, New York, and Berkeley, California. The Weathermen are the militant faction of the Students for a Democratic Society. Only one of the 13 is now in custody.
At 7:30 this morning, KPFK received a call from a woman identifying herself as a member of the Weather Underground.
Hello. I'm going to read a declaration of a state of war. This is the first communication from the Weatherman Underground. Kids know the lines are drawn. Revolution is touching all of our lives. Freaks are revolutionaries, and revolutionaries are freaks. If you want to find us, this is where we are. In every tribe, commune, dormitory, farmhouse, barracks, and townhouse, where kids are making love, smoking dope, and loading guns, Fugitives from American justice are free to go. Within the next 14 days, we will attack a symbol or institution of American injustice.
Power belongs to the young people and the black people in this country. Come on, we gotta fight it out. We gotta build a strong base, and someday we gotta knock those motherfuckers who control this thing right on their ass.
Is that declaration still in force? And was it throughout the 8 years of the Obama administration? Didn't Dawn, with that declaration, renounce her own citizenship? She also said, "Freaks are revolutionaries and revolutionaries are freaks." Doesn't she support our findings that the Satanic Garden was built by modern-day descendants of the perverts, pedophiles and cannibals from the ancient world? Dawn also used the words, "Fugitives from American justice are free to go." Did you know, San Francisco DA, Chesa Boudin, was the first to end cash bail for all criminal cases? This is such a radical ideology because it releases hardened dangerous criminals back onto the street. And it's spreading to a city or town near you. What else do we know about Chesa Boudin? He was raised like a son, by Ez and Dawn, because his parents, Kathy Boudin and David Gilbert, were jailed for the 1981 Brinks truck robbery. That Nyack, New York robbery and murder was a combined operation between the Weather Underground, thought at that time to no longer exist, and the Black Liberation Army, which supposedly ceased to exist as a backlash to that very robbery. Let's see how violence on the streets today, mainly by Black Lives Matter and Antifa, was hatched into reality, at Harvard, in 2009, 4 years before the official start of the Black Lives Matter movement. On July 16, 2009, there was an arrest, steps from Harvard Yard, which empowered Obama to crack the whip on the backs of Americans for his remaining 7.5 years in office, with his false claim that the Cambridge police acted stupidly, and it proves that America was still a racist nation. What interesting timing. If you recall, 25 days into Obama's first term, Ez and Dawn published the book, Race Course Against White Supremacy. We've seen white supremacy and usury of black Americans, celebrated in the Satanic Garden, and learned the weathermen were the true white supremacists who perfected the dark art of manipulating black Americans into joining their conscripted armies. In case you missed it, listen to this weatherman's words.
Power belongs to the young people and the black people in this country. Come on, we gotta fight it out. We gotta build a strong base, and someday we gotta knock those motherfuckers who control this thing right on their ass.
You see? Race division was a hallmark of the Weather Underground strategy from day one. If you recall, Twin Towers also represent divide and conquer, which is the only way a tiny minority can overtake a huge and powerful nation, like America today and Russia in the last century. Speaking of conscripted, was this arrest at Harvard a scripted event? Were we fooled by world-class performance artists plying their trade? Let's first peel back the veneer and explore the details the media and the Obama White House kept hidden from view. Gates was with his driver, returning from Logan Airport and his trip to, guess where? China. What was he doing in China? Gates claimed on his affidavit, his front door was jammed, and entered through the rear door. This proves he did not forget his keys, as was reported by Obama. And, the part you will never hear, is, rear entry, sodomy, is described by the occult with the term a ninth gate. The year was 2009, and Gates was the man who made rear entry with another man. The ninth gate. These perverts and pedophiles do not miss a detail when they plan an operation well in the future. Let's continue. The arresting officer was named Crowley, which harkens back to one of the most famous occultists of all times, Aleister Crowley, known in part for his depraved sexual magic tricks. He died in 1947 and was often described as the wickedest man in the world. In fact, Crowley was thrown out of Italy, in the 1920s, for being the wickedest man in the world. Was Cambridge police officer Crowley scripted into this Gates affair to be framed as the wickedest white man in the world? Crowley was responding to a 911 call and was therefore required to enter the house, identify anyone in the house and ensure there was no home invader hiding in some room of the house. That was his job. When he arrived, the front door was wide open. Why? Those who scripted this did not want Gates opening the door and allowing Crowley to enter. That would have been a form of invitation. And, had Gates actively not allowed him in, Crowley's duty would have required that he overpower Gates and immediately put him in cuffs. So, the choice was to do what Gates claimed on his affidavit, that he left the door wide open so the maintenance man could come right over and fix the door. Let's continue. Crowley walked through the open front door and Gates, sitting in his living room, started to berate Crowley for entering his home uninvited. This placed Crowley in a defensive position as he struggled to follow protocol, and asked Gates to identify himself. After some argument from Gates, who claimed loudly that he lived there, he eventually flashed his Harvard badge. Was this just one more way that Gates was showing his middle finger at Officer Crowley? The officer was required to see a driver's license, since a Harvard badge is meaningless to the Cambridge police as identification. Eventually, after more argument, Gates provided his real license. Was Gates demonstrating the new way that Black Americans were being trained to talk back at the police? Was this a type of performance art? Before we talk about the person who placed the 9/11 call, there was an odd little detail about their relationship to each other, Gates and Crowley. This information could not have been known publicly at the time of the arrest, but is relevant to your broader understanding of what went down that day at Harvard. Gates had done, and continues to do, work with DNA and hosted and co-produced several PBS shows tracking African ancestry using DNA tracing. While learning about DNA, Gates flew to Dublin to verify his own family law, that he and his relatives were part Irish. And, this was verified by his DNA test. Henry Louis Gates Jr. has Irish as well as African American heritage. That DNA test as well as a DNA test from Officer Crowley revealed, later, that not only did they both have Irish ancestors, but that they were in fact related to one another. Both Gates and Crowley are descendants of the same 4th century Irish warlord named Neil of the Nine Hostages. More names. Neil became O'Neill, and today, there are about 3 million people who are descendants of this Irish warlord. He made himself so prolific by always having 9 wives, at any given time. Is this relationship yet another occult signature? Were they both scripted into what looks like a giant fraud against the American people? Now, what about that 9/11 call to the Cambridge police? The story is that a passerby saw 2 black men trying to force the front door open and promptly went to the neighbor to report the incident and to initiate a 9/11 call. But here's another place the story falls apart. If a stranger did not happen to be there, no call would have ever taken place. That neighbor, and likely other neighbors, would have not been alarmed to see Gates on his own front porch. And if Gates had not vanished from the front door to make rear entry, the alerted neighbor might have looked out the window and said, "Oh, that's Henry." Gates needed to be out of view before the passerby's knock on the neighbor's door. So, wasn't this well-timed intrusion also part of the deception? Also, if a person is really alarmed about a crime in progress, don't they usually call the police on their own cell phones? So, once Crowley had a positive ID on Gates and verified Gates was indeed the resident at 17 West Street, things calmed down. But, when Crowley was about to leave, which would have ended the incident, Gates started to ramp up his verbal attacks on Crowley. When Gates started to insult the mother of Officer Crowley, the cuffs came out. Why was Gates egging him on? And why would anyone insult the mother of a stranger? Wasn't that a terribly dehumanizing thing for Gates to have done? All that, after returning from China, which may have been 15 hours on the plane. Wouldn't most people have preferred the police officer to leave so they could start to recuperate from such a long trip? Once they were on the front porch, by chance, someone was there to take the picture that bounced around the globe millions of times. Was it that one image that Gates was struggling so hard to create? Did Gates study performing arts at Harvard's Invisible College? Look at Crowley, who's on the right side in the photo, appealing to Gates to calm down. Is this a Harvard professor putting on a live demo for his students? Has this kind of struggle become the new norm, today, to resist every word and every action from every police officer, no matter what? Did Gates talk to someone in China about his upcoming celebrity status? Before we watch Obama's claims about this fake race hate crime, which you now know more about, one final note about Aleister Crowley. Crowley broke ground in the occult world, making the bizarre and evil much more mainstream. Wasn't that exactly the impact created by William Shakespeare's productions? And today, Crowley is believed to have been a British intelligence MI5 agent. Is everything evil in the world really just a royal rollout? Here's Obama, appearing before the facts were in.
What's been reported, though, is that the guy forgot his keys.
False.
Jimmied his way to get into the house.
False.
There was a report called into the police station that there might be a burglary taking place.
Accessory.
So far, so good, right? I mean, if I was trying to jigger into, well, I guess this is my house now, so it probably wouldn't happen. But let's say my old house in Chicago. Here I'd get shot.
Anti-police.
But so far, so good. They're reporting. The police are doing what they should. There's a call. They go investigate what happens. My understanding is, at that point, Professor Gates is already in his house.
True.
The police officer comes in. I'm sure there's some exchange of words.
Yelling.
But my understanding is that Professor Gates then shows his ID to show that this is his house.
Eventually.
And at that point, he gets arrested for disorderly conduct.
Obscene screaming.
Charges which are later dropped.
True.
Now, I don't know, not having been there and not seeing all the facts,
Why talk?
what role race played in that.
None.
But I think it's fair to say, number one, any of us would be pretty angry.
Agitating.
Number two, that the Cambridge police acted stupidly.
Anti-police.
In
agitating.
arresting somebody when there was already proof that they were in their own home.
False.
And number three, what I think we know separate and apart from this incident is that there is a long history in this country of African Americans and Latinos
agitating,
being stopped by law enforcement disproportionately.
Anti-police.
That's just a fact. As you know, Lynn, when I was in the state legislature in Illinois, we worked on a racial profiling
agitating
bill because there was indisputable evidence that blacks and Hispanics were being stopped disproportionately.
Not disproportionate to the number of crimes committed. You may have just witnessed one of the greatest, and most destructive, examples of performance art in American history. More evidence that this was a false flag operation. The date chosen, July 16th, is an occult date, when old dynasties end and new eras begin. For example, on July 16, 1918, Tsar Nicholas II, and his Romanov family, were massacred by the Bolsheviks, ending a 300-year dynasty and reign. On July 16, 1945, the Trinity nuclear test succeeded, and the atomic age had begun. On July 16, 1969, the Apollo 11 placed a man on the moon, ending the era of humans as Earthlings and beginning the space age. On July 16, 1999, John F. Kennedy Jr. was reported killed in a plane crash off Martha's Vineyard, ending the age of Camelot. On July 16, 2009, steps away from Harvard Yard, the Black Lives Matter movement began with the staged fake race hate crime arrest of a Harvard professor. Was the date chosen an encoded way to signify the end of the age of the white man? It was also the 62nd birthday of Assata Shakur, convicted cop killer, who happens to be the inspirational leader of Black Lives Matter movement. Was this a birthday present? From the Oval Office? A combined Obama administration and Weather Underground operation? Did the infamous beer summit set the detonator on a new kind of powderless bomb? Did the weathermen concoct an invisible incendiary device with far more explosive power than any using the traditional black powder? Did it go off in Ferguson, New York City, Chicago? How about Seattle and Portland? Was it just practice for a much larger incendiary device? Can it be diffused before it's too late? Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dawn have shown genuine loyalty to Assata Shakur, and even named their two sons, Zayed and Malik, after Zayed Malik Shakur, Assata's husband, who died of his injuries the day they were involved in the murder of a New Jersey state trooper in 1973. So, you'll see, the creation of the false flag faked arrest was far more than just a birthday present to the hero of Bill Ayers, Bernardine Dawn, and by extension, Obama. Could it have also involved a remake of the Black Liberation Army? Assata Shakur was a leader in the Black Liberation Army, which went off the radar with their 1981 failed Brinks truck armored car robbery. So, Did their partners in that crime, the Weather Underground, owe Assata Shakur a huge favor? And did they pay that favor in spades, in the first July of the Obama administration, with the rebirth of the Black Liberation Army, the BLA, as the BLM? Was the false flag arrest of Harvard professor Henry Louis Gates Jr. the incident needed to marshal support for this new Marxist organization? But, was the original name to be the Black Liberation Militia? A militia is more local than an army, and one can see, the structure of Black Lives Matter clearly allows for local control and local influence. So, what clues might we get from the Second Amendment? A well-regulated militia and its ability to legally bear arms is protected by the Second Amendment? Is that also the plan of Black Lives Matter? To replace the police with their armed, peace force? If they form legitimate well-regulated militias, even constitutional conservatives would be obliged to support their rights to arm Black Lives Matter. But, had they not chosen a rollout name that shames white people, before the public rollout in 2013, how successful would they be? Would a free people, and particularly white people, give their families hard-earned money to support the Black Liberation Militia? And tweet using the hashtag Black Liberation Militia? To get on board that bandwagon? Do they know that funds given to BLM via Act Blue are going directly out the back door to the DNC and the Weather Underground? No, probably not. When will they learn? When you invite Satan to dinner, you're placing yourself, your family, and your whole country on the menu.
Satanic Takeover, who are these people?
So, who are these people? And, for whom are they really working? Because, they're certainly not working for we the people. May God save America. Thanks for watching this video. Please like and share widely. For more intriguing info on these, and other, secrets, check out the one-of-a-kind book, Fortress Harvard, Think Tank for Royal Revenge. You can get a copy of the book, at Barnes & Noble and at Amazon.com, or, as a PDF download, at patriotsword.com. Download your copy of Fortress Harvard, Think Tank for Royal Revenge, today. And, to stay in touch, and be advised of new videos, visit patriotsword.com. If you liked watching this video, and want to see more, please consider donating. Donations are appreciated, very helpful to the effort, and can be made at patriotsword.com. Thanks, again, for watching, and stay tuned for more clues.